Hi, this is Mike Coolahan with a 2016-17 data report for the Meridian Board of Education on October 5th. I'm also submitting the data report separately here for you to see it in its entirety. The data report includes data collected at Highland School the past year, and in some cases for the past 2 and 3 years. My intent is to provide a solid understanding of Highland Grade School's performance and tracking as measured by several indicators. Here's an explanation of what's being measured and how it's being measured, the general reaction to the data, and critical questions about the subject that should be considered moving forward. At first, we're going to look at Highland attendance. The attendance of all boys and girls is being documented month by month. Further comparisons have been added to look at individual grade levels, bilingual and special education attendance trends. The data is taken from daily attendance records as documented on a daily basis by classroom teachers. The highest monthly rates of attendance were August and September 2015-16. It was November and April. The next highest months of attendance are November and May, and during 2015-16 it was October and December. The lowest monthly rate of attendance was December and March. Last year was February and March, and the previous year was December and March. So it looks like we need to zero in on December and March especially. The next lowest month this year and last year was January. Kindergarten and second grade had increased attendance rates over the previous year's same grade. Pre-kindergarten and first grade had decreased attendance rates over the previous year's same grade. Pre-kindergarten attendance rate was the highest in the building at 96.1%, and kindergarten was the lowest at 95.37%. The yearly attendance of the school went up for the second year in a row as a full average. This past year, 18 students were referred to the truancy officer, and there were 16 the year before that and 13 the year before that. This included 11 kindergartners, 4 first grade students, and 3 second grade students. The previous year there were 7 kindergarten students and 10 the year before that. Some questions that come to mind are what attendance incentives can be offered? How can kindergartners be identified early and encouraged to increase their attendance this coming year? What supports do kindergarten families need to support good attendance? And what can be done to increase the attendance rate specifically in the months of January and March? Next, we'll look at discipline in the way of minors and majors. This is our positive behavior intervention system. We're going to look at last year's data and the 2 years previous to that. Teachers and support staff are trained to support the same acceptable norms of behavior all throughout the school. Minors can be handled by teachers and support staff, and then majors result in a phone call from the principal along with an after-school detention. Majors are handled by the building principal, and discipline data is collected. It's used for school-wide goal setting and quarterly celebrations. Majors were up 26 for the 2016-17 school year. First graders had 27 more majors as first graders than they did as kindergartners. Much of this can be attributed to one first grade student. Majors were up on the 8 months, and majors were down in December over the previous year. Kindergartners had 7 more majors this year than last year, and second grade only had 2. During the 16-17 school year, the minor data was relatively consistent with the previous year. Majors indicated a 50% increase. Spikes in majors occurred during the months of October and February, and teachers have been using the system for 6 years now and are utilizing the program as it was intended. Second graders had a drop of nearly 45% in majors in comparison to their first grade year. Highland is well aligned with Monroe Center on expectations and consequences. Some questions that this data raised was, what support will the receiving second grade teacher need to help the student? What additional interventions should occur with the one identified student? What supports can be given to students during the month of February? And what can be done to reinforce the PBIS program to result in fewer referrals, especially during the month of February? The percentage of majors and minors combined by grade levels is as followed. For the 2015-16 school year in kindergarten, there was an increase from 44 to 69. In first grade, there was an increase from 77 to 97. In second grade, there was a decreased from 80 to 66, and that's both combined. So first to second graders had a 10% decrease from 15-16 to 16-17, and kindergarten to first graders had a 20% increase from 15-16 to 16-17. Next, we'll move on to certified personnel and the evaluation process. Non-tenured teachers are observed at least twice formally and twice informally during their evaluation cycle the first 4 years. Tenured teachers are evaluated every other year and are evaluated formally at least once and informally observed with written notes and feedback each semester during their 2-year evaluation cycle. Three out of 17 of the teachers' certified evaluations were rated as proficient. 14 of 17 were rated as excellent. 45.5% of all Highland rankings were rated as excellent, and 36% of the district rankings were rated as excellent. In comparison to the district average, Highland Grade School had fewer rankings in the excellent rating in physical space, communication with students, reflecting on teaching, and professional growth. In comparison with the district average, Highland had a higher percentage of teachers rated as excellent in the category of knowledge of students, coherent instruction, respect and rapport, culture for learning, managing classroom procedures, student behavior, and engaging students in learning. This was the third year where administrators looked at all district rating data and analyzed similarities and differences. This practice should continue. This year, professional development took place with Dr. Bolts to look at and address inter-rater reliability and informal observations. Some questions that come up are, how can teachers be supported in those areas that were listed above where a smaller percentage of teachers were rated as excellent? What professional development can occur at staff meetings and also through shared articles? And then also, how can teachers be encouraged to formally reflect on lessons each day? We'd also like to look at the professional development that occurred with the administrators. Did it show closer inter-rater reliability? Teachers set student learning objectives specific for each student this year. And at Highland this year, 11 of 21 earned the excellent rating on both of their SLOs. 6 of 21 teachers earned excellent SL rating by having one SLO in the excellent range and one in the proficient range. And when those two averaged, they came out to 84.5 or higher. 3 of 21 students earned the proficient SLO rating when the two SLOs were combined. And 1 of 21 teachers earned a needs improvement SLO rating when the two SLOs were combined. The SLOs contributed to many teachers earning an excellent on their evaluation, as the excellent SL rating bumped their proficient professional practice to excellent with the SLO. Some questions that this raised are the goals being set high enough with enough rigor? This was a practice year with our new STAR testing. Will this year's baseline data be useful in setting more rigorous goals for next year? How should goals be set using this baseline data? How can teachers be supported while setting higher goals? What professional conversations should take place with this year's data as teachers set goals? How can teachers be encouraged to set higher goals? The STAR data shows that in some classes and grades, fewer than 85% are making the expected gains as projected. How can the SLOs be written more in line with projections made by STAR? I think that's been addressed because we're looking at all the students making a year of growth this year as we look at the SLOs and have gone to building-wide SLOs. Next, we'll look at the local assessment, the STAR 360. The students take the STAR reading and the STAR math. They're taken 3 times during the school year, in the fall, winter, and the spring. And this was first used during the 2016-17 school year. The STAR assessments are major assessments being utilized at Highland to measure student performance and growth all through the year. Progress monitoring occurs at additional times. And then questions that have been raised is, what can be done to make sure that all students are making sufficient yearly progress at kindergarten, first, and second grade? What supports can be put into place for students? What measures should be looked at when students exceed the targets for their grade and age? Is the data provided guide and instruction for groups and individuals? And how meaningful is this data to our teachers? So some graphic representation follows. Here you can see the percentage of students that met their reading student growth percentile and their math student growth percentile. A couple of questions that come up is, why is second grade growing at a higher rate of student growth percentile than first grade in both reading and math? Then what could first grade do to close this gap? This is a graphic representation of reading student growth percentiles and math student growth percentiles. You'll see males and females, free and reduced, special ed, English learners, English as a second language learners, and also overall. As you can see, this brings up a couple of questions. First, why are the girls growing at a faster rate than the boys in both math and reading? And then how can the successes with special education students in the area of math be shared with EL, ESL, males, and free and reduced students? These graphs here show the end of the year average grade equivalent, also the end of the year average percentile rank. If you see first grade, you can see that they're ending up right about the end of first grade, the beginning of second, and second grade's ending up in reading at about the middle of third grade and a little bit beyond the beginning of third grade. This brings up a couple questions too. Why are the second grade students growing at a faster percentile ranking than the first grade students? And then how can the second grade successes be replicated with first grade? This graph shows the HIGHLAND average percentile rank growth in first grade, second grade, overall, and in special education. A couple of questions come up is, why is math growing at a slower rate in first grade and a faster rate in second grade? Again, how can the successes with second grade math and special education math be shared with first grade? The HIGHLAND average grade equivalent growth shows a 0.7 in reading at first grade, 1.3 at second grade, overall is 0.9, and in special ed 0.7. In math it shows 1.1 or a little over a year, almost a year and a half at second grade in math, 1.2 overall, and then 1.4 in special ed. So why are the first graders growing at a rate below 1.0 in reading, and how can the successes with second grade be replicated with first graders? How are first graders not showing the same level of success that our second grader students are showing? This shows individual classroom data for the kindergarten teachers. It does raise some questions. Why did only one teacher's class have a student growth percentile above 60%, while the other four classes ranged from 44 to 60? What did one kindergarten teacher do differently than the other four? What can the other kindergarten teachers learn from that kindergarten teacher to boost those averages? Are star-suggested interventions being followed at kindergarten in all classes? And what needs to happen in these kindergarten classrooms to raise the student growth percentile to above 65% in all classrooms? And what can we do to enrich the higher achieving students? Here are the student growth percentiles in reading by teacher for second grade and first grade. The questions that it raises is, why did second grade reading SGP averages range from 73 to 95%, while first grade only averaged from 38 to 60%? What are second grade teachers doing differently than first grade teachers? Are STARS suggested interventions being followed at first grade and second grade? What can first grade teachers learn from second grade teachers to boost these averages? And what needs to happen in these first grade classrooms to raise the student growth percentile to above 65% in all classrooms? Here are the student growth percentiles for math at HIGHLAND. Red is the second grade and the brown is the first grade. It does raise a few other questions also. What did second grade teachers do to have 3 of 4 teachers have an SGP above 80% in math? What can first grade teachers learn from second grade teachers to boost their averages? What can we do to enrich higher achieving students? What are second grade teachers doing differently than first grade teachers? And what needs to happen in these first grade classrooms to raise the student growth percentile to above 65% in all classrooms? Next, we have the School Improvement Review from 2016-17. There were 2 goals set in the School Improvement Plan. Number 1 was that 75% of our students would demonstrate 1 year of growth at kindergarten, first, and second. Our reading goal, 112 out of 217 students, or 52% of the students at HIGHLAND demonstrated 1 year of growth. Our math goal was that 75% of the students at HIGHLAND School would demonstrate 1 year of growth in math as measured by the STAR Math Assessment. 132 of 181 students, or 73% of the students at HIGHLAND, demonstrated 1 year of growth. We did fall short of the goals that we had set in these areas. A couple of questions. One would be, why did we fall short? What can we do to make up that gain in the coming year? And just an observation was that this was the first year that we used the STAR assessment. This is some interesting data about the professional development of teachers that was done during the school year. You can see here how many days were done for different types of trainings within the district during school days. All this training was done during the 16-17 school year that's listed here. This slide compares the amount of absences difference this year in the support staff from the year before, 15-16 to 16-17. There was some professional work done by staff on CPI training and also bilingual conference. And as you can see here, the support staff missed about 134 and a half days fewer than last year. All funds have been tracked in the building budget for all areas and all classroom supplies. A general reaction here is all budgets were managed well and stayed on track for the entire year. At the end of the year, $722 was left that was not expended. All other budgets were fully expended. A critical question was, can pre-kindergarten utilize more of their budget to pay for the salaries of the teachers? This year, that has been changed so that the grant will now cover 100% of the two pre-kindergarten teachers for the 2017-18 school year. Another area looked at closely is our special education students and our special education program. We look at the number of students identified to receive special education services. There's some questions that come up when we think about that. Are students making educational gains as a result of their IEP and of special education services? Are the students making up gains that will make their IEP and services no longer necessary in the next few years? Are students receiving services in the most appropriate environment, and are they being mainstreamed when and where appropriate? Why are there higher percentages of students receiving special education services at Highland than the district average? And why are the percentages of students in the least restrictive environment at Highland lower than the targeted percentages? How are the paraprofessionals being used to support those students in the regular education classroom? And what training needs to be done to the paraprofessionals to best meet the needs of the students? The district-wide special education eligibility is 11.53% compared to the state at 14.8%. The Highland special education eligibility is 16.74%. So the big question there is, why does Highland have a higher average than the state in special education percentages? Our hope is that we're identifying the students early, we're giving them the help that they need so that they'll no longer need special education services. Some conclusions and recommendations follow. We're going to continue to monitor and track student attendance. We're going to intervene when absences reach 5. We're going to track prior truant students to watch them closely during the next school year. Going on to discipline, PBIS data will continually be looked at closely, and we'll see where the majority of major and minor referrals are coming from. The team needs to continually analyze the program and the infractions as they're taking place, paying special attention to students with the most infractions. Students and teachers need to be supported in this process to help the students gain the most from their education to minimize disruptions. There will be continued focus on the areas of the observations and the evaluations at Highland Grade School for staff meetings and in service during the 2017-18 school year. We'll continue to monitor student progress closely to make sure that all students are on track with their learning. Student achievement for subgroups like special education, bilingual, and grade levels must be closely monitored throughout the year for each grade level and each area being assessed. Each individual student will be monitored and tracked for individual growth. This will impact how students are identified and served for interventions. In future actions, monitoring of all areas will take place continuously throughout the school year to offer ample opportunity to make corrective actions as the data analysis is taking place during the school year. The expectation here is that academic achievement will increase, attendance will increase for students and staff, and discipline will decrease. This report sets a very clear path of monitoring to take place during the 2017-2018 school year. Thank you for your time and attention. I'll answer any questions at the board meeting, or you can call me at your leisure. Thank you.